embers, branches falling, animals running for their life, other people trying to escape.
Have you heard of the wildfires so intense it created its own weather? Or another that wiped out an entire town? Well, these disasters will leave you shocked, and they changed history forever. Watch to uncover the terrifying details. Number 20. The Peshtigo Fire, 1871, USA. Northeastern Wisconsin and parts of Michigan became a blaze inferno in the Peshtigo Fire on October the 8th, 1871. History remembers it as one of the deadliest wildfires, having killed between 1,200 and 2,500 people. Forests and fields were in dangerous dry months of drought. The powerful winds that day caused small brush fires to merge into an unstoppable firestorm that day. The rivers and natural barriers did little to stop the flames that moved faster than they could react. In hours, entire towns were reduced to ashes, including Peshtigo.
The Peshtigo Fire was the first firestorm in recorded history. It's not that there wasn't any firestorms before that, but this was the first event in which our science and understanding of the weather and of materials and of the way fire behaves.
This fire was not only massive, but extraordinary. The intensity grew so great that it created its own weather system. Embers were fanned miles ahead of the main fire by winds from the fire, and the walls of flames were 100 feet high, and winds sounded like freight trains, survivors said. Most people had no warning. However, they ran to rivers, wells, and streams for safety. But even the water wasn't safe. The fire took in oxygen and suffocated everything in its vicinity. Rivers bubbled, and anyone who took shelter were scalded. Not everywhere, of course, but many perished in the very places they thought would protect them. It was devastating afterwards. Survivors said it was nearly unbearable heat, choking smoke, and deafening roar of flames. There was nothing but ash and destruction and terrible memories. The Peshtigo Fire was not just a disaster, it was a brutal reminder of nature's raw power. Could something like this happen again? Well, you won't believe what happens next.
It's the deadliest fire in U.S. history, and it all began with a windstorm on the evening of October 8th, 1871.
They believe it was the same weather system that was going to the Chicago area.
But the damage to Wisconsin would be far more extensive.
Chicago area lost about 300 people. We lost anywhere from 1,200 to 2,000 people. We will never know the exact amount.
Number 19, the Kersha Fire, 1936, USSR. It happened in 1936 in Kersha, a logging settlement located in the depths of the woods of the Soviet Union. It was not just another fire. It was a disaster that resulted in more than 1,000 deaths and altered the safety culture in industrial towns forever. The town was almost entirely dependent on logging, which was a highly hazardous occupation with virtually no fire protection in the early 20th century. The summer was very hot that year. Weeks of drought made the forest dry and ready to burn, or so it seemed. When the fire began, it did not just spread, it rather erupted. And now you can't miss the stunning fact I'm about to show you. The flames consumed everything that was in their way, and they did it much faster than anyone could possibly run. Residents had no chance. Wooden structures were a terrible fire hazard and would burn easily. Witnesses said that there was complete mayhem, and people tried to get out of the building with their loved ones. Some people ran into the forest to escape the fire, but the fire was unrelenting. It destroyed all the houses, trees, and people, leaving nothing but ashes. The Kersha Fire was incredibly fast. The town was already a goner, since there were no natural barriers to stop the fire and no precautions taken. It was as if the fire seized the whole family and could not even understand what was going on. But here's what makes this tragedy even more shocking. It did not only burn down Kersha, it revealed the price of negligence. A town constructed on wooden structure, located in the middle of the forest with no fire safety measures or equipment. Kersha was a time bomb ticking. The aftermath told the whole story. the cold, hard truth. This was not just a wildfire, it was neglect. It was negligence and a lack of understanding that an entire industry could be created without considering the safety of the people. The Kersha 2 fire became a turning point. It made leaders think about the need to put in place better safety measures in hazardous industrial zones. But here's a question to leave you thinking. Could such a thing happen today? Given all the information on fire safety, is the world ready for catastrophes such as the Kersha 2? Well, stay tuned because the next fact about how this fire changed history will surprise you even more. Number 18, the Cloquet Fire, 1918, USA. The Cloquet Fire was one of the deadliest wildfires in history in the United States, and on October the 12th, 1918, it roared through northeastern Minnesota. This wasn't just a disaster, this was a nightmare that killed 453 people, tore down over 38 towns, and changed lives forever. It was already a tinderbox. The forests and fields had months of drought, which had dried them out and primed them for disaster. The field was then sparked from train work. At the time, railroad transportation and business were vital, but they were a deadly cost. Dry grass and wood got small fires started when sparks flying off trains struck them. Those sparks had fueled an inferno before, but this time it was different. How could it be that a single spark could cause so much damage? Well, let me explain. The speed with which the fire spread was terrifying. It was a perfect storm. Strong winds and dry wood. The possibilities left towns no chance of responding. The families fled their homes in panic. There were some who escaped the flames, but not everyone. Forest, field, and town burned in its path. No time to prepare entire towns disappearing overnight. The aftermath was apocalyptic after the flames died down. Communities were simply wiped out, lives shattered, and communities left to rebuild from nothing. It really wasn't a natural disaster in the strictest sense. The Cloquet Fire was a warning about the effects of neglect. Yet railroads which are so necessary for the country's success, had become silent arsonists, fanning their flames in innumerable places. This tragedy gave people a chance to think again about fire safety while industrial expansion began. But here's a question to keep you thinking. Could this happen again? With today's technology and fire prevention efforts, are we truly safe from another Cloquet Fire?
Seismic event unfolded. Minnesota's deadliest disaster. The Cloquet Fire, an immense forest inferno, roared to life. It was a disaster that would go down in history as one of the most terrifying and devastating events to ever strike the land of 10,000 lakes.
Tired of expensive, low-effort script writers for your YouTube channel? Autoscripter.ai is the ultimate solution. Say goodbye to low-quality, poorly retention amateur scripts that fail to generate thousands of views for your channel. At a fraction of the cost, Autoscripter.ai helps your videos go viral. In just 3 steps, Autoscripter.ai creates a polished script tailored to your needs. Just input your title concept, select your tone and style. The intuitive interface makes editing and refining effortless, fast, smart, and trusted by hundreds of satisfied users who have already discovered the amazing tool. Start your free trial today and watch Autoscripter.ai transform your YouTube channel. Just click the link in the video description below now.
Number 17, the Great Hinckley Fire, 1894, USA. Did you know Hinckley faced one of its deadliest wildfires in 1894? The Great Hinckley Fire didn't just destroy a town, it claimed 476 lives in a single day. In 1881, there was a logging hub in the area around Hinckley. Forests were cleared by logging companies, and the huge piles of dry debris, branches, bark, and waste were left behind. Add in weeks of drought and high winds, and it became deadly. An inferno developed into Firestorm when the fire began. The winds this created were their own wind, sucking in more oxygen and spreading the flames faster than we can ever begin to imagine. It moved faster, so people fled. Everything it touched burned, and it blotted out the sun with smoke. Residents tried to find refuge in ponds or wells. Unfortunately, the fire sucked up the oxygen around them, so there was no possibility of survival. Eventually, more than 200,000 acres were gone, and Hinckley was a smoking ruin.
November 1st, 1894, a major fire incinerated the town of Hinckley, Minnesota. It was the deadliest fire in Minnesota history. After a 2-month drought combined with high temperatures, several small fires started in the forests of Pine County.
Number 16, the Thumb Fire, 1881, USA. In Michigan's Thumb, on September the 5th, 1881, a massive wildfire scorched a wild trail of destruction. Also known as the Thumb Fire, this disaster wasn't caused by nature alone. It was one fueled by human action. The land was dangerously dry. Due to this, and that was thanks to the fact that they had burned down the area for slash and burn farming, farms were burned to clear the fields, and the smoldering debris could easily reignite. Well, as the fire started, it spread fast, devouring farms, houses, and forests with little to nobody in its way. The flames took 282 lives and left many families not only homeless, but with no food by the time they finally stopped. The destruction went beyond the physical, and it literally tore apart communities, claiming survivors to literally start over from the ground up. Why was this fire so deadly? Well, the combination of dry weather and risky farming methods created a perfect storm for disaster. While slash and burn farming cleared fields effectively, it also left behind embers that could spark into something far more dangerous under the right conditions. Stay tuned, there's more to uncover. Number 15, the Black Saturday Bushfires, 2009, Australia. Next on our list is one of Australia's most devastating events, the Black Saturday Bushfires. On February the 7th, 2009, the state of Victoria faced a disaster that claimed 173 lives and destroyed over 2,000 homes. It was a day of unimaginable loss and heartbreak. The conditions that led to this tragedy were extreme. Temperatures soared to a blistering 46 degrees Celsius, or 115 degrees Fahrenheit. Strong winds ripped through the region, and the land, parched by drought, became a tinderbox. To make it worse, some of the fires were deliberately started, adding to the devastation. Entire towns disappeared in a matter of hours. The community of Marysville was nearly obliterated, leaving survivors to piece together their shattered lives. Flames spread so rapidly that many had no time to react, and the scars of that day still linger. Here's where it gets even more haunting. This wasn't just a natural disaster. The mix of human actions, extreme weather, and poor preparedness created a perfect storm. The aftermath wasn't just about rebuilding. It forced a reckoning with how communities and governments handle such catastrophes.
Flames, lots of flames, trees on fire, 100 foot high, embers, branches falling, animals running for their life, other people trying to escape, the fear on their faces. Just beyond belief, absolutely beyond belief.
Very scary. I've never seen anything like it. It came out of the forest at 100 miles an hour, and it just took everything in its path.
Number 14, the Campfire, 2018, USA. The Campfire, named after Camp Creek Road, where it began, wasn't just a wildfire. It was a disaster that forever changed California. On November the 8th, 2018, a single spark from electrical transmission lines ignited the deadliest fire in the state's history. You might be wondering, how could one spark lead to such devastation? Well, I'll explain in a moment, but first beware. This story shows just how fragile safety can be when conditions align against us. Blowing at extraordinary speeds through dry bone vegetation, the fire was fueled. Over the course of just a few hours, a town of thousands of people, Paradise, became completely overrun. Desperate residents filled roads to escape through flames and choking smoke as the fire consumed everything in its path. It was weeks after the flames died down before almost the whole town was lost, and 85 lives along with it. Their lives were changed forever and left local families with nothing but ashes. And that's when the realization set in. It wasn't just a natural disaster. There was something else to it. Faster than you can say perfect storm, infrastructure failures, lack of preparation, and years of risky conditions conspired to bring it on.
After more than 2 weeks of a raging inferno, California's Campfire may be getting under control. According to officials, the fire is now 98% contained after rain helped firefighters put out some hot spots. At least 475 people are still missing, according to the Butte County Sheriff's Office, but that is actually down from more than 1,000 just a few days ago.
Number 13, the 1939 Black Friday Bushfires, Australia. The Black Friday Bushfires were another devastating wildfire event which took place just 60 years before Black Saturday. The backdrop of disaster was set on January the 13th, 1939, when extreme heat and drought prevailed. 71 were dead and homes and thousands of acres of forest and farmland burned. But unless you had the proverbial short haircut, white uniform, and lots of starch, you were not a firefighter back then, and firefighting resources were nothing like today. They were volunteer forces and makeshift equipment with no match for the ferocity of the flames. Rural Victoria was devastated by the fires, and the trauma of their aftermath triggered national consideration about how to provide better firefighting resources and strategies. The Black Friday Bushfires provided one of the lasting legacies of the embellishment of the formalized firefighting services, with expansion of the County Fire Authority, or CFA, in Victoria. Since the time of this tragedy, operating fire management practices in Australia have been changed after the lessons learned from this tragedy.
Valiant efforts to check the onrush of the flames were made by every available person, but firefighting against odds like these is hopeless. Completely out of hand, the blaze devoured everything in its path.
Number 12, the 1997 Indonesian forest fires. The 1997 Indonesian forest fires weren't just a disaster, they became a regional crisis. Triggered by slash-and-burn farming and worsened by the El Niño-induced drought, the fires ravaged Sumatra and Kalimantan. But the real catastrophe came with the haze, thick, toxic smoke that spread across Southeast Asia. You might be wondering, well, how bad was it? Well, flights were grounded, schools were shut, and the hospitals filled with patients suffering from respiratory illnesses. Neighboring countries like Malaysia and Singapore were suffocated by the smoke. The fires claimed 240 lives directly, but the haze impacted millions and caused billions in economic losses. And the consequences? Devastating.
There are no pollution meters in Palangkaraya, so it's difficult to precisely gauge just how harmful these appalling conditions are. The doctors say that breathing in this air for just one day is the equivalent of smoking 40 cigarettes. I've only been here for 2 days and can already feel the impact of the smoke on my eyes and throat. But the poor people of Palangkaraya have had to endure this poisonous scourge for more than a month, and with little or no help from their government.
Number 11, the Miramichi Fire, 1825, Canada. The Miramichi Fire on October the 7th, 1825, remains one of the most catastrophic wildfires in North America's history. After a scorching summer, settlers' land-clearing fires spiraled out of control, unleashing flames that tore through New Brunswick. Entire villages were consumed as the fire spread across 1.5 million acres, leaving between 160 and 300 people dead. Settlements along the Miramichi River were left in ashes, and survivors faced a harsh winter with no homes or crops to sustain them. Number 10, the Matheson Fire, 1960, Canada. The Matheson Fire of July the 29th, 1916, is remembered as one of Canada's deadliest wildfires, claiming 223 lives and leaving a path of devastation in northeastern Ontario. The fire began under dry and windy conditions, which were worsened by sparks from locomotives traveling along the railway. These small sparks quickly ignited the parched brush and timber that blanketed the area, creating a massive blaze that swept through towns and forests with terrifying speed. The communities around Matheson were caught off guard as the fire spread. Without advanced communication systems, warnings were slow to reach residents. Entire towns were engulfed in flames, leaving people scrambling for safety. Tragically, many didn't make it. Those who survived described harrowing escapes, with some taking refuge in rivers and wells to avoid the relentless flames.
Most famous and recognizable buildings in Canada, but this structure is the second one to occupy this very spot. The first one, built in the third quarter of the 19th century, was destroyed by fire 100 years ago.
Number 9, California's Cedar Fire, 2003, USA. California is no stranger to fires, but the Cedar Fire of 2003 is a defining moment in the state's history. 15 people died in the blaze, which was considered small to medium-sized when you consider its death toll, but large enough to have become the biggest fire in California's history. The blaze burned more than 273,000 acres, destroying more than 2,800 structures, and did damaging and costly environmental damage. A hunter trying to signal for help in the Cleveland National Forest set off a small blaze that started the fire. Strong Santa Ana winds and dry conditions combined to turn what started as a seemingly contained fire into a rapid spreader. The flames quickly spread across miles and thousands of residents had to flee. Changes in fire management and control were forced on the ground by the aftermath of the Cedar Fire. They also put in place stricter regulations to prevent this from happening again and launched public awareness campaigns on fire safety. The fire also served as a stark reminder of how rapidly a single mistake can rapidly become a catastrophe.
Initially claimed the fire was started by a gunshot ricochet. It was later determined he set the fire on purpose as a signal fire so he could be rescued. More than 2,200 homes were lost and 15 people killed, including a firefighter.
It was pretty devastating.
Some homeowners who lost everything were glad to see criminal charges filed.
These issues ourselves are responsibilities. These are the responsibilities of rebuilding that I have to face. He has to face the responsibility of what he did too.
Number 8, the Linton Bushire, 1939, Australia. Australia's history is punctuated by devastating bushfires, and the Linton Bushfire of 1939 is no exception. The fire, fueled by drought conditions and human activity, tore through the state of Victoria, leaving around 71 people dead and countless farmlands destroyed. The fire occurred during a period of extreme heat, with temperatures soaring and vegetation drying out. When the flames broke out, they quickly spread across the landscape, consuming farms, livestock, and homes. Entire communities were left in ruins, and the economic toll on the agricultural sector was immense.
Some of the worst bushfires that Australia has ever experienced. Fires that bring destruction and even death.
Number 7, the Victoria Bushfires, 1983, Australia. The Victoria Bushfires of 1983, often referred to as the Ash Wednesday fires, were a series of blazes that devastated parts of southern Australia and Victoria. With a death toll of 75, the fires caused widespread destruction, burning more than 2,000 homes and leaving thousands of residents displaced. The fires were the result of a deadly combination of arson and severe drought conditions. Strong winds and dry vegetation fueled the flames, creating an unstoppable force that tore through towns and rural areas. The damage wasn't limited to property. Entire ecosystems were wiped out, and the psychological toll on survivors was immense.
History's most devastating wildfires took place in April 1983 on what became known as Ash Wednesday, when fires started throughout southeast Australia. The small town of Upper Beaconsfield in the state of Victoria was one of the worst hit.
Number 6, the Yarnell Hill Fire, 2013, USA. The Yarnell Hill Fire, which occurred in Arizona on June the 30th, 2013, stands as a solemn tragedy in the history of firefighting. This wildfire, sparked by lightning, claimed the lives of 19 firefighters from the Granite Mountain Hotshots, an elite team trained to battle the most dangerous blazes. The fire began in a remote area but quickly spread due to dry conditions and strong winds. The Granite Mountain Hotshots were deployed to contain the flames, but a sudden shift in wind direction trapped them. Despite their expertise and efforts to create a safety zone, the fire overtook them, marking one of the deadliest days in U.S. firefighting history.
Images recorded by the Granite Mountain Hotshots show them moving toward the fire that killed them. The town of Yarnell had already burned over. The pictures end 30 minutes or so before the crew descended into a canyon and became trapped. But radio transmissions recorded by other firefighters capture the Hotshots' growing concern.
Breaking in on Division 16. Right around Hotshots. Stay in front.
An effort began to get them help from the air.
We'll do the best we can. We got the Type 1 helicopters ordered back in.
Okay, I'm here with Granite Mountain Hotshots. Your escape route has been cut off. We are preparing a deployment site. We're burning out around ourselves in the brush. And I'll give you a call when we are under the shelters.
I need you to pay attention and tell me when you hear the aircraft, okay? Because it's going to be a little tough for us to see you.
There were no more transmissions from the Granite Mountain Hotshots, but the images they left behind on a camera that survived the fire show their love of both the hard work and the camaraderie of firefighting. For CBS This Morning, Saturday, John Blackstone, San Francisco.
Number 5, Portugal's Pedrogao Grande Fire, 2017. The Pedrogao Grande Fire of June 2017 is one of Portugal's most devastating wildfires in recent history. With a death toll of 66 and countless injuries, the fire left an indelible mark on the nation. The fire began amidst an intense heat wave that had dried the landscape, turning forests into tinderboxes. Coupled with poor forest management practices, such as the dense planting of highly flammable eucalyptus trees, the fire spread rapidly. One of the most heartbreaking aspects of this fire was how many victims were caught while trying to flee. Cars were engulfed as the flames consumed roads leading out of the area, leaving people with no escape. Entire villages were surrounded by the inferno, with residents forced to defend their homes or flee with little more than the clothes on their backs.
A deadly inferno like no other. The wildfires that began spreading across this mountainous region late last night spared nothing in their path. Panic and fear as residents fled the fast-moving flames. Anguish the moment this woman realized she's lost everything but her life. More than 60 people killed. Nearly half died as they tried to escape, trapped in their cars on a road north of Lisbon that was suddenly engulfed by fire. This woman says she was inside her home when it started to burn. The fire was all around us, she says. The firefighters came in to get us because we could hardly breathe. As for the house, it must have burned for sure. As helicopters ferried the injured to hospitals, entire villages were evacuated to safety. The survivors left with nothing. Euronews reporter Filipa Soares was on the scene of a relief effort underway.
Portuguese people are showing their solidarity to the victims of the fires. The ones who escaped are donating food, drinks and clothes to the ones who had lost everything.
Number 4, Greece wildfires, 2007. The fires that raged through Greece in the summer of 2007 were simply disastrous. They led to the death of about 84 people. These fires, which were started by arsonists, combined with a heat wave, affected large parts of the Peloponnese and Evia regions. It not only caused material damage, but the remarkable flames consumed historical sites, olive trees and woods. The confusion during the fires was obvious. People were forced to leave their homes, but often it was done too late. Some people drove out of their homes in their cars, while others barely escaped the fire, and still others were caught up by the rapidly spreading fire fronts. It was a challenging time because numerous fires broke out at the same time, and there were too many of them to put out.
How bad is the damage?
Well, the damage is very serious in the city of Rafina. Actually, it's the first time we witnessed an urban fire. It became as a forest fire, and then it became an urban fire. The shock is great for the residents of the city, because 50% of the people who lived in the areas affected was their permanent residents.
Number 3, Bastrop County Complex Fire, 2011, USA. The Bastrop County Complex Fire, which occurred in Texas in September 2011, might not have had the highest death toll, 2 lives were lost, but its sheer scale and impact were devastating. Over 1,500 homes were destroyed, making one of the most destructive wildfires in Texas history. The fire began during a period of severe drought, with high winds from Tropical Storm Lee exacerbating the situation. Once the flames took hold, they moved with frightening speed, consuming homes, forests, and farmlands. Entire neighborhoods were reduced to ashes, and residents were left scrambling to evacuate. You can't wait to uncover the next incredible story.
An almost unimaginable fire burning thousands of acres of forest in eastern Bastrop County. It started on September 4th, 2011, when high winds pushed trees across power lines, the sparks setting fire to underbrush that spread through the ancient pine forest.
Number 2, Oakland Hills Firestorm, 1991, USA. The Oakland Hills Firestorm, or Tunnel Fire, burned the hills of Oakland and Berkeley in California in October of 1991. The fire, which was intensified by the wind and dry vegetation of the time, burnt down over 3,000 houses and led to the death of 25 people. This fire was unique in that it grew very quickly. At first, a small grass fire was thought to be contained, but the following day, due to wind, the fire was back and burning fiercely. Whole districts were on fire, and people had to leave their homes within minutes. The heat and the fanned-up flames also produced what are called fire whirls, which only added danger to the fire.
A fast-moving fire has erupted in the hills above Oakland, California. Fueled by 60-mile-an-hour winds, it explodes through expensive hillside neighborhoods in minutes, forcing thousands to flee.
Coming out! Get off the tree!
Hundreds are trapped in the fire's path, cut off from escape by narrow canyon roads, quickly jammed with cars.
Number 1, Victoria's Ash Wednesday Fires, 1983, Australia. The Ash Wednesday Fires of 1983 remain one of the worst disasters in the history of Australia and its people. On February the 16th, the fire ravaged Victoria and southern Australia, with heat and winds that did not seem to stop. It killed 75 people, burnt down more than 2,000 houses, and left thousands of people without homes. It was destruction at its worst, something that had not been witnessed by many. The fires didn't smolder, they raged. Whole cities and whole towns were wiped out in minutes as fires consumed all that stood in their way. Firefighters battled bravely with the confusion and fire. Their courage was visible even through the flames. Some of them never returned home. Their lives become legends in the hearts of the nation. Families lost everything. Darkened clouds and acrid smoke created pictures of fear. People said they had to flee from the walls of fire that left their houses in ruins within simply minutes.
History's most devastating wildfires took place in April 1983 on what became known as Ash Wednesday, when fires started throughout southeast Australia. The small town of Upper Beaconsfield in the state of Victoria was one of the worst hit.
And that wraps up our look at the 20 most deadly fires of all time. These tragedies remind us of the importance of awareness and preparedness. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more impactful stories.